Some people who run around to understand be ad thinking that the Arsenio Hall situation and Jimmy Kimmel situation is similar, but they're not. Arsenio got ran out there once he had Minister Louis Farrakhan on his show, and he spoke from the mind. He had all kinds of people that turned on him, and he had to deal with that. Even because Arsenio did bring people on his show that weren't necessarily going to be on other shows, and they spoke, and he had to deal with all kinds of issues. As a matter of fact, there's not another late night show that I can think of in recent memory that had as many controversial situations and takes that did what they did. Gotta remember something, Arsenio was the only black man that had some success on those TV shows in the last 40 plus years too. So let's keep it 100. And he was riding in some dairy streaky territory. Other black shows that tried didn't last long. Keenan Ivory Wayans, Sinbad, Magic, you remember all them shows. They didn't really fare too long. And, he did, but he went up against it in a different way. He brought on Minister Farrakhan. Minister Farrakhan defended Michael Jackson, spoke, and said what he said. The Jimmy Kimmel thing, Charlie Kirk thing is a whole different hit. But this is the thing. Um, Bill Clinton wasn't the biggest Farrakhan supporter in the whole with the whole how they were going on about it. You know how that went on. And just think about it, probably he was on late mid spring of '94, and then you fast forward about a year and a half later, the Million Man March. So it's interesting how that all hit. Arsenio did come back in the OOs briefly. The show was a dud, but he did come back. But what they had did, he always had to fight. They never want him to be more successful than Jay Leno. They didn't want him. He was a black man in in a fish out of water. But the topics, the thing about it is that Jimmy Kimmel said something that's trying to be comedy of what he was saying as a line. He didn't have to go through the same struggles that Arsenio Hall had to go through. So I'm just trying to tell people there is no comparison with what happened with Arsenio and Kimmel. They really are not in the same stratosphere because they made a beeline to run Arsenio out. They really wanted to sabotage. And he was used on the Fox plantation. Fox was trying to be the upstart. Remember, they appeal to all the shows and what have you and everything like that. But you see how things are. You see how things have gone down. Now, it wasn't just a freedom of speech. It was a freedom of who you would have on your show. People used to, once upon a time, before you had 99 channels and this and that, people would have whoever they wanted on their show and they would debate. Even on regular TV. There was a time when regular TV wasn't so stigmatized and so stagnant where you could actually speak your mind. I know it seems like a lost art nowadays because when you have people trying to create martial law and dictate what you can and what you can't say, where does the First Amendment come and go? But Arsenio didn't just have to deal with the First Amendment. It was who he brought on and what was said. And I always tell people all the time, a black mind that's well in tuned and enlightened is the most dangerous weapon to some folks because they can't stand the thought of it. And you see how reactions become and go. But there was no comparison between the two. Because Jimmy Kimmel got far more opportunities despite wearing blackface and a former girlfriend like Sarah Silverman, who's a known bigot, which that it does play a factor. And to me, well, I'm not big on either one of him. Because at least in Arsenio's case, there was nothing like that to say, hey, that you were offensive or this or that and the other. But it was two different hits how this went down. So I don't understand how people can compare the two at all. Because Arsenio really had to go through it times two, And I don't think Kimmel should have been, he shouldn't be facing no repercussions behind that. But that's just martial law in effect. They want you to say what they want you to say, how they want you to say it. And they're trying to, sell an agenda. Arsenio went against the agenda and wasn't afraid to. And that's what you got to do if you're really about that. Please hit like, subscribe, welcome thoughts, comments, and I do respond. Thank you. Wash your hands. Keep your mind clear. Watch out for another. Share the video if you like. Stay safe, stay blessed, stay woke, stay free. I'm all the time. Peace.